I'm Stacey Harvey-Brown and welcome to this Learn to Weave video walkthrough. This is an overview of the stages needed for weaving, just to give you an idea of what's involved. So I won't go into too much detail. But at the end of the video, if you're interested in more information, I'll give you details of where you can get a step-by-step video guidance on how to weave your first project. But for now, let me show you what's involved. There are 5 main steps involved in weaving, going from the cone right the way through to your finished article. And briefly, they are: number 1, making your warp, which is the basis for all your weaving. Number 2, putting the warp on the loom so you can do something with it. Number 3, getting your loom ready to your specified pattern. And number 4, actually creating your fabric, weaving your pattern. And number 5, finishing. So here's how you make a warp. Remember, this is an overview, so I'm not going to go into the nitty-gritty, but the main thing that you need to do with a warp is to put your threads in order. And to do that, you have to cross them. So you have first one thread, then the next thread, I'll just turn around here, then the next one, and so on, if you watch my hand, all the way through. And you can see from what I'm doing that when I turn the threads, you can see they're all in order, as if you're clasping hands. And that's the main basis in making your warp. What I'm doing just here is creating my warp. I'm taking it from the cone and separating them out into individual lengths. And this is going to make the warp, and to make sure it stays in order, I have a little cross, which I'm putting in here, which you can't see at the moment, but you'll see it later when I take it to the loom. So just bear with me, and I'll do some more warping. So we're going to chain by putting a hand through the loops, and then guiding one hand through the loops. Technically speaking, this is a short warp, so we don't really need to do it, but it looks very pretty. Well, perhaps not pretty, but it's very useful. And now we're going over to the loom. And now we're going to beam. And beaming, it sounds great. I love the term beaming. Basically, all it is you're winding the warp onto the back beam. Hence the beaming. It's going onto the beam. So I am literally winding. Here's the handle. This particular loom wants to wind inwards, which always seems a little odd, but hey ho, it works. And if I now come to the front of the loom and hold this, there you go. You can see that all my threads are in their threading order, all nice and neat. Neat on the back of the loom, neat in the cross, and I'm ready to start threading. Okay, so you've seen the warping, putting on the warp on the loom, the beaming where we wind it onto the back beam, and now we're going on to the threading. The threading involves threading each individual end that you prepared on the warping frame in and putting it through a heddle. Oh, by the way, this is a heddle. This white nylon kind of string, I guess, goes on a frame which is called a shaft, and you're kind of like threading a needle, but it's threading a heddle. And we thread through that gap in the middle. And basically, it's the order in which you thread these on the 4 different shafts that give you the patterns that you can then do with your feet when you're weaving, or with your hands if you've got a table loom. So I'm going to be starting to thread things up, and hopefully you'll see what's going on. I take my first thread, and I'm going through shaft number 4. So the first heddle on shaft number 4, and I push it to one side. Then I want shaft number 3. Bring that across, select the next yarn, and thread it. Shaft number 2. This is the order in my pattern. And my cross, which I did earlier when I was warping up, is here. You can see it there. separating out all my threads. Having threaded, we're now on to the slaying. And slaying is the putting through of the threads that you've already threaded through the reed or the batten. I'm just going to, this beats up against the fabric and sort of makes the fabric one piece. I'm just going to show you how we do that. And I'm just taking 2 threads, and each 2 threads I'm putting through one gap in the reed here. It doesn't actually take very long. Makes it much easier to beat up and make your fabric firm. Right, the actual tying on is quite straightforward. You take 2 separate bundles. You can see I've divided them up into 1/2 inch groups again. And you take your stick, which is attached to your front beam, and you move those 2 groups over the top of the stick and underneath, and then you do 1/2 of a bow. Then you come to the other side and you do exactly the same thing. I'm not trying to get everything tight as a drum. All I want to do at the moment is get my yarns even. So it's not tension as in really, really tight, it's in tension as in evenness. And that's the first half of the knot. Now you can see from this that I've actually started weaving, a bit cheating a bit, but never mind. And I'm doing a little pattern, which is quite funky when you look at it. Anyway, I'm going to show you how I just weave, and it literally is depressing the pedals and putting the weft yarn through on a shuttle. This is a shuttle. Okay, here's that mug placemat that you saw me doing just now. What I'm going to do to finish it off is to turn the ends under and sew them with the sewing machine, and then that will be, I'll wash it, and then that'll be a little placemat for me for my mug. So a little practical use. I hope that's given you a very brief introduction to weaving. I have a short series of videos which go into a bit more detail so that you can follow along. I'm doing a table runner with the same setup as this, so you can see how you can get different patterns. I also run weaving courses for beginners and more advanced weavers. So do please visit www.theloomroom.co.uk for further information. And I look forward to seeing you or hearing from you. Thanks for watching.